ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is the Canadian Bowler Podcast. I'm Mike Patulli, joined by the always handsome Daryl Fitzgerald. How's it going, Daryl?
It's going good. Keep it short and sweet. I hate daylight savings time.
Yeah, it's always fun to coordinate us because if anyone's not aware, Saskatchewan, where I live, we never change our time. We are standard. It never changes. So I always kind of get thrown off when Daryl and Luke change their times because I either have to be an hour or 2 hours away from them. And it's just always weird to like plan anything that we're doing with one another to know that it's different. Daryl, I think, messaged me last night and was like, "You're aware that we're an hour different now, right?" So I actually was in the United States last week. So I was actually in California when they switched the clock. So I think it's one of the first times or the first time I ever had the clock switch on me. And then I was like, oh, it's an hour different than it was last night. So a little weird to experience.
It seems like it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. I hate it. Just let's get rid of it.
No. I think that's a commonplace item. You have a very popular opinion. I think a lot of places have discussed just removing it because it's terrible for a lot of people. But before we get too deep into it, since you are here, please do like, comment, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We appreciate any sort of interaction you would be able to give us. Specifically, the likes and the subscriptions really do help us and drive us going forward to keep making videos and keep making content as we go along. If you're not able to catch this live, we are on YouTube same day. And then we are on all major podcasting platforms within the week of the show. So definitely do check us out after the fact if you're not able to catch us live here. So I guess we can get right into it. We do have a few discussion items. It's probably a little more of an informal show than we usually have because there's not as much going on because we're kind of at the end of winter for a lot of lawn bowls across the world, and I guess Australia is kind of winding down their summer at this point, and we're sort of winding down our winter. So well, we touched on it last show, the world, I think it's what's the actual name for it, Daryl? The World Indoor Short Mat Championship, is that the correct name?
World yeah, I think it's the World Short Mat Bowls Championship. I think that's the official title.
Right. Yeah. So that's currently taking place. So we had a team from Canada go, or multiple teams from Canada end up going to it. Yeah, World Short Mat Bowls Council. If you want to check it out on Facebook, I've been keeping the results. Talking Bowls in Canada, they've been pretty good about posting the Canadian team's results. World Short Mat Bowls Council is the actual Facebook page.
Links in the description too.
Yeah, our links in the description. So you can see all the results there for the bowls that's been going on this week. They're currently playing off, I guess it'd be the championship rounds, sort of the last sort of final events. They're currently going on. Canadian teams, as I said, were there. I'd say the results were a little disappointing for probably those teams. It looked like it was a pretty rough go for all of the Canadian teams. I think there's a couple wins in the later rounds. Looked like they sort of started to have a little closer games, better games as the games went on, which I think is kind of indicative of the indoor experience or playing against the sort of the European countries that play it all the time. So what did you think of what you saw there, Daryl?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's always hard when you see teams from Canada go over and they don't get the results that you're thinking they might get, or I mean, for our teams, they were struggling to try to find a win for all the teams across the board. So it's hard to see. I was really happy to see them grab a couple wins before they closed things off for their matches. We had a little bit of a discussion before. I think this might be typical of what we would see out of Canada. We have a large outdoor contingent of bowlers. We have an even smaller contingent of indoor bowlers, and I think it would be safe to say that the pool that we select from for going over in short mat is even smaller than that. And like we see in Commonwealth Games, like we see in World Bowls, you've got developing nations coming out that haven't really played the outdoor game that long, don't have all the programs and stuff that some of these other countries do, especially the European nations in short mat. And we are in that developing country stature, I think, for short mat. To be perfectly fair, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with what you said there. We have a like our short mat association doesn't really have like even have membership, I don't think, from all the provinces. It's very much sort of kind of in its infancy. It seems like it looks like it's developed over the last couple of years, and obviously if they're starting to send people away, it's making steps to move things forward. But definitely, I think we're on the developing side of short mat in Canada. I think it's something that definitely could be pursued and kind of developed to improve pretty significantly over the coming years, because we're starting to see the interest from it from just like Ontario primarily is what we would have seen most of it over the last little while. And I know Saskatchewan's got quite a contingent of people that are playing it, and I see there's quite a contingent in BC as well. So I think over time, if they sort of get things together, we could probably have a little bit more of a development from our Canadian short mat contingent. Definitely, I see lots of opportunity there to develop that game, and then potentially be able to compete with some of those almost professional short mat players over there in Europe. Like I've followed it for a few years myself because I find it interesting the dynamic of short mat and lawn bowls, and so how they're very much related. They're very much the same game, but in the same breath, they're very different, and they're not the same game at all. And so I find it very interesting to see that dynamic, and I've followed specifically the results from Europe over the last few years. So it's interesting to have Canadians involved with it at this point. But yeah, I quite enjoy that dynamic because we in Canada have sort of the two separate associations, and be nice to see if we can kind of have the short mat one grow over the coming years here.
It's interesting to see some of the countries that are in there. I haven't followed it nearly as closely. I mean, I see stuff on Facebook pop up and some other stuff as I'm going through bowls things. But like, did I see it correctly? Like Belgium was really high in a lot of the rankings. They're really good, and I wouldn't have suspected that being used to the outdoor and the indoor scene. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting seeing the countries that are involved in getting the success, sort of as you're alluding to. Like, I think though there's probably, and I might be mistaken when I say this, I don't even know if there is probably an actual outdoor green in Belgium. They probably play something like short mat year round, or that is their only outlet for playing. So then that might be obviously a bit of an advantage if they're playing on a short carpet, if they're playing traditional bowls or short carpet and they're playing short mat. So that might sort of be indicative to what you're seeing, where that is their main outlet. So they're very good at what they're doing compared to probably some of the Canadian players, which I imagine they bowl outdoors and then they come inside and play short mat in the winter when they don't have the ability to bowl outside. So regardless, if you are interested, definitely check out those results, because I think they're probably playing the finals right around now. I was watching it earlier this morning because you can get different streams on that Facebook page that we have the link for. A few different streams too. I think there's Irish and Welsh and even Scottish people streaming different streams sort of independently if you want to check out the different games that are ongoing right now.
Yeah, we've got Bill Arthur in the chat. So one of the players that were the, and also one of the teams that got a win. So congrats, Bill, on that. He says, agree with you about the pool being small. We need to develop more in Canada, and also the top short mat bowlers were not willing to travel. So that's true. They went with the silver medalists for the most part in most of the categories. Bill Arthur, the best triples team we played was Norway, and apart from the UK, a lot of the countries only play short mat. So some good info there from Bill. Thanks.
Yeah, no, interesting points there. With the development of the game, I think that's the traveling part of it, and more players playing eventually. I think costs that would be associated with probably playing in these events will maybe go down, maybe get some support from the governing body, things like that. So I think that's something that with development we might see sort of our top players potentially more interested in traveling to play in things if there's a little bit more support. And then obviously the points of Bill making there the UK countries, it very much is correct. The UK countries play short mat pretty consistently, and a lot of the Norwegian, or I guess Nordic countries, I guess would be, I've been seeing a lot of the Nordic countries have started to pick it up, sort of Sweden, Norway, and then even they're not technically a Nordic country, but Belgium, as you were sort of alluding to, in the Netherlands, they're pretty consistent with their playing short mat and sort of the indoor bowls. So thanks for the info, Bill. Appreciate getting the updates and the extra information from someone actually there.
You said the possibility that Canada will host in, well, he says 2016, but I'm guessing 2036 or 2026. 2026. Sorry, not 36. Yes. 26.
2-3 years from now, that'd be quite the. Yeah, 2026. He just corrected it, so that would be perfect. That'd be really cool if Canada actually ended up hosting. I think we haven't hosted a major bowls event, short mat event since would we probably be going all the way back to the Commonwealth Games in Victoria?
Yeah, as far as a major event, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about, actually.
And short mat, I mean, I'll say I don't play a lot of short mat. We do have some growing small communities in and around where I am in Ontario. Obviously, the Coburg had a huge thing going this year. There's a ton of potential because there's bowlers that don't do anything else during the winter for the most part. So, having that option where we can't build an indoor facility and we want another option, short mat, huge potential. Hopefully it gets its footing and we start really seeing it take off. That'd be really, really cool.
Yeah, like me in Saskatchewan here, we have a club in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, which doesn't have a lawn bowling, any sort of affiliations there. They have their own short mat club though, and it's probably, I wouldn't say incredibly easy, but it's pretty easy to get a couple mats, either loan bowls to a new club if they need them, or have them purchase sort of the older bowls from established lawn bowling clubs to sort of get themselves going. It's not terribly difficult to find their seniors hall, a gymnasium, the Legion, whatever it might be. There's usually some sort of a flat surface floor that you could roll out short mat carpets on. So I think, as you're saying, definitely huge opportunities because it's worked in Saskatchewan to essentially create a club from scratch. I know there's lots of places in Ontario that have done this sort of the same thing. So there's huge opportunity there if the associations, maybe the provinces, can get some money to people to get mats, sort of get the bowls, what they need to actually start short mat. You can sort of start it in lots of places with very little overhead costs. And I think it's a great opportunity to get people into a similar sport, pretty much the same sport as bowls. And then maybe if they've played it, try the outdoor game and then sort of have the dual membership type of thing going. So it's definitely something there is the ability for people to try both sides of it.
Agree. Bill, again, we really need to develop more competitive games in Canada. I'd agree with that too. When I hear about short mat competitions and ones that are, I'll say, quote unquote, fairly big, it's usually one here and one there. Usually maybe one or two during the entire short mat season in the winter. There's not a lot of highly competitive. It's mostly just, come out, give it a try, roll bowls, pick up games, what you'd see on a general every day at a club, but nothing ultra competitive. So that'd be cool to see that competitive side pick up too. But I guess you don't want to see that membership pool start to grow and grow and grow so that you actually have people that'll want to play competitive as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a started from the grassroots type of a thing. Just get people playing, get people trying it. And once you have sort of that deep base group playing, competitive obviously will flourish from there. So I think it's a lot of just getting people mats, getting people the equipment they need to just try it, get it going. And that's really the first steps to developing it from the ground up. So I think, I was going to say, I think you had some some barn burner topics you wanted to bring up. So I'll let you sort of lead this next area and then spout out whatever I want to talk about in regards to them.
I wanna throw out just this really quick thing. I just came across I guess my desk, so to speak, the last couple days. There was an interesting article that popped up, and it was on lawn bowls, and I thought the title had prison in it and lawn bowls. I thought, what is this about? What happened? I thought maybe someone went to prison. It's from the UK, and apparently there's a little bit of an uproar in, it might have been one of the counties or one of the areas in the UK where prison chiefs actually spent roughly like £10,000 buying lawn bowls equipment and chess sets for their inmates. Really interesting. I thought it was pretty cool to see something like this pop up, because you don't hear prison and lawn bowls, but apparently some prisons might have lawn bowling greens in the UK. I had no idea that was a thing, and I guess they're having a little bit of an uproar on it, because people are saying, prison's supposed to be a punishment, not a leisure resort where you play bowls and play chess. But I guess they've seen a spike of over 60s, so what they call the pensioners over in the UK, it's spiked by 82% in the last 10 years. So they have a lot of people going into prisons that are of that senior age. So I guess this is a way to keep them active, because they're not going to get into really heavy athletic sports at that age probably. So I just thought that was interesting. Prison, lawn bowls in the same sentence. That's kind of interesting.
Well, it's just opening up the opportunity to have an exhibition match. Like, we're gonna, what's the longest yard? We're gonna have to call it what, the longest jack or something like that, and we'll have the prison team go up against the guards, or get Team England or something to show up and play the prisoners. I don't know,
That'd
but definitely an interesting article. Like, I think you'll probably share it in tandem with the show here, the link to maybe the article itself.
If anybody wants to check it out, it's very short.
Very interesting topic, because it's one of those things where if you give the prisoners something to do and sort of keep themselves active, I understand that aspect of it, but in the same sentence, the argument of it's not a leisure resort, I can understand that. So very, very interesting to see the two sides of that coin, but fun read. I enjoyed reading that article. So
all right, want to get into some topics of discussion. I think we'll be talking about Canada specifically, obviously because we're from Canada, we're in Canada, we know Canada, but I think there's a lot of these topics and discussions and the same issues that span the globe, whether you have arguably the biggest budget in the world, I'm guessing multi-millions for Australia, versus say a budget like ours, or even the USA, which has none. Some of the countries over here and in the UK, they're probably in and around $1 million mark, I would say, even though they're heavily into bowls. We face the same issues, membership issues, marketability issues, travel, all that kind of stuff. So I want to have this conversation, because I think it's something that is good to have before the season starts, because there's always discussions about what do we do in the future. Well, 2023 is already set. We've got the Canadian Championships in BC. The provincial championships are all probably set up for most of the provinces on where they're going to be and when they're going to be. But now's the time to talk about 2024, 2025, and so on, until and seeing if we want to run it. Now, Bowls Canada, as a little bit of a background, changed the national championships pre-COVID. They had a little bit of it was supposed to be like a 3-year thing, I think, or a 3 or 4 year thing, and COVID hit. So it was pushed out, and they kept with the way that we're doing nationals now, which is spread out. We've got mixed pairs, seniors, which are separate. If you're in the nationals, like the majors, the singles, the pairs, or the fours, you can't play in the seniors or the mixed. We have them all over Canada, potentially based on where things are hosted, and our national championships are singles, pairs, and fours. You can only play in either pairs or fours as one thing, and then you can play singles as a second thing. So that's a little bit of the background. Now, I wanted to throw something out to Mike. We struggle so much in Canada with marketing the sport. I don't care if it's local clubs, provincials, or provincial associations, and so up into BCB. Even internationally, we have issues with marketing. But I wanted to ask you, with all the events that we have, the way that we have it, what would you change or add or do to help market the game in Canada more than it is today?
Well, that's a loaded question, Daryl. Thank you. There's lots of things that I could start with on marketability. Like in general, marketability of bowls is very difficult. It's a topic of conversation that you constantly kind of have. I feel it's like a circle that just goes around, where people talk about, we need to get on TV, we need to be on streams, we need to have sponsors. It's kind of a circle, and they realize when you actually dive into it that it's very difficult to get quality sponsors, get TV streams, TV and or streams to really get good news coverage. It's very difficult because bowls is not an easy sport to market. Might be an unpopular opinion that I have. I find the sport probably one of the hardest sports to market that there is out there. Really, like when I think of sports that are on TV, they're on TV for a reason, because the sport can be watched pretty easily. People enjoy watching them. And I don't really see bowls having an inroad to replace a lot of these sports to really get that marketability. Bowls, for me, was a sport that was birthed. If we kind of go back, kind of the heyday of bowls would be, let's say, the 60s and 70s is kind of when I think, if you look, that probably would be amongst when our memberships were the strongest in Canada, even probably in the UK, was sort of that 60s, 70s. And I think it was a lot related to bowls being a gentlemanly sport, honestly. Previous days, 60s, 70s, very much as a gentleman's sport. You'd show up in your whites or your blazer, whatever it is. You'd play a game. They'd drink a tea after, and they'd sort of have that aspect. So it was very much social, but it had sort of that heavy gentlemanly aspect to it. And I don't even know what the term would be, but I think probably in the last 30 years, gentleman has become less of a priority in society as a whole. It's not a huge thing where you need to have your blazer and your whites. And obviously that's been a problem we've had with bowls, is we've very much fought against the whites. Probably like the unpopular, I guess, viewpoint that it's a senior sport and that it's for the elderly, things like that. So stigmas like that has been something that bowls has fought against for a long time. Yeah, like for me, I think it's that part of it, fighting against all of those stigmas and sort of trying to make it more marketable. It's a problem in the respect that the gentleman aspect isn't there anymore. So I don't think the sport is as marketable as a lot of these other ones, because people aren't there necessarily for having that cup of tea, coming out to be, I don't know, like good sportsmen, whatever it might have been in the 60s, 70s, where we wanted to show up in our whites and sort of have that aspect of it. So I think bowls has to make a significant pivot to move towards not being so much on that gentleman's side, having the spectators involved, having the more quick hitting games, embracing sort of the social membership side of things. Tea is not exactly, I'd say, the most popular beverage like it maybe was in the 60s, 70s. I think we're probably looking at something like a beer being the main focal point. So like Saskatchewan, from where I'm from, we have two very successful lawn bowls, essentially beer leagues that currently operate. And they've been very successful, brought in lots of people and lots of money for the clubs. Huge boons here. Like, it's something that I think clubs all across Canada and even the world kind of need to latch on to, move away from our previous ideals of gentlemanly sporting, showing up in soft claps when you make a nice shot. And we really need to embrace, honestly, the being loud, honestly, even a little obnoxious would be fine. Have sort of the trash talk, quick hitting games, whatever it is. I think you need to really kind of move in a direction like that, because in general, a beer league is really a successful, easy thing to sort of operate, get together. You're going to get a lot more people in the club trying the sport, which is the key thing. And I think when you have those social aspects, like having a beer after the game, making friendships with people, it's going to honestly keep people there and keep people coming back to try it. So long-winded sort of answer, but you gave me a very loaded question. So I feel like I kind of elaborated a little bit enough to at least have you some talking points there too.
I'm going to throw back some questions because I think you brought up some really interesting things. I agree. I think what we've considered kind of the golf, for me, it's the golf mentality where, all quiet when he's hitting, very respectful for the most part. I think that in order for bowls to start to take off, we need to start leaning towards that that spectacle kind of thing. Make it interesting. If someone isn't interested in the bowls, they still want to come and enjoy the atmosphere. I can take people to baseball games or basketball games, and they don't care about baseball or basketball, but they want to be there for the atmosphere. They want to be there because people are excited. There's music. There's exciting things going on. It's not the sport necessarily. So give people a reason to come out and watch bowls. Sometimes it'll be for the action and stuff that's happening, but in those bits and pieces of bowls, which we know are out there, where you have a span of a few ends where nothing's really happening. It's just draw. There's still other stuff going on. There's music, there's drinks, there's social atmosphere, and people don't have to be confined and forced to be relatively quiet around the green and fear of disturbing the player. I think that's something that over time will eventually, hopefully, find its way out. The true competitive bowler at that high level should be able to block out all those distractions. People do it all the time. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, as far as the nationals go and what we're doing today, what would you change about the nationals to make it more user-friendly or marketable?
Well, first thing, I would eliminate the tier 1 and tier 2 nationals that they switched to however many years ago it was. I really dislike that it's tiered, and that essentially you have your top tier, which is the major nationals and the singles, and then you have your second tier, which is the mixed pairs and the seniors. I understand they want to have more people play at nationals and get those experiences, and they're probably trying to vaguely connect that to the LTAD, the long-term athlete development, which I feel they're really grasping at straws. That's my personal hot take at that, because although you're getting the people the opportunity to play at the nationals, if you're playing a second tier event against second tier opponents, except for maybe getting your first opportunity, I don't really see it being a developmental avenue. And so I think it's kind of like you're just swinging and missing or hitting a foul ball, if I'm using a baseball analogy. It's not really what you're trying to do, and it's misguided in my opinion. Okay. I personally would like to see with the events, like back to what it was previously, where it was essentially open, anyone could play in it. And I might even have a really unpopular opinion here. I'd say we need to eliminate some of the events that have been created. I feel it's spread
hot take.
Too much. It's I feel like we have too many events, specifically like a mixed pairs. I don't see the necessity of us having a mixed pairs nationals. Even this current formats that we have of the juniors, U25s, I don't necessarily see, and the pairs that are associated with that, I don't see the necessity of having kind of 3 events that kind of run concurrently there. So there's a few different things that we're doing that I feel like we need to entertain cutting down on how much there is, because I know specifically after COVID, I think there's going to be some financial realities for a lot of provinces in the near future that they're not going to be able to support the full docket of nationals that there currently is. It's pretty hard to get that amount of funding to send however many people it is to nationals each year for those different respective events. So I feel like we may need to look into maybe cutting things down, reducing what it is. I don't know if the answer is have one big event a year in one location where people can play in multiple events and show up and sort of have on not like I guess the Australian Open would kind of be like a carnival of bowls type of an idea where it's just one big event over a span of a week in sort of one centralized location. I don't know if that's the answer, but it's something that should be considered, I think, because realistically what's currently being done, I think, isn't working. It's not really fostering development of the game, specifically at the higher levels.
That's fair. Really interesting point there. I wanted to pull out because it's one of the points that I have for not only marketability, but just the sheer vastness of Canada. I know other countries still that are out there have the same problem of moving players across. You know, Australia, you've got players out in Perth, and then a ton of stuff is happening out in Queensland. And you're moving players all the way over to there to try to compete, especially in like BPL stuff. People from way over there coming over, and for us, it's transporting people from BC to Nova Scotia, Nova Scotia to BC, all over the place. So, I've had the opinion that the one-stop shop location might be something that works in Canada. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff behind that, but I'll say, a lot of countries that do that. Australia does it. We've kind of reported on their national events where we give a ton of results because it's all happening back to back to back to back, all in one location. Scotland and England, I think, do a similar thing. It's all back to back to back. New Zealand's all over the place because we get results from here and there, and other countries are the same. Canada is all over the place, and you have to make travel arrangements to go to Saskatchewan, and then to Nova Scotia, and then to BC, and then to Ontario, and whatever it is. What do you think about taking all the championships that we have, whatever it is, and just running them as a series back to back?
Like, that's kind of what I was alluding to, like with the carnival idea, whatever you want to call it. I think you have to entertain an idea like that. I think you'd like run into the problem with Canada being so large and having so many dispersed regions. We're going to have to probably move where they hosted it year after year. But the one-stop shop is honestly probably as good an idea as there can really be. I would say that's an idea we definitely have to entertain in the future. The other sort of ideas I would have, if you're going towards that one-stop shop format, I would potentially entertain switching these type of events that we have, maybe the format to like maybe a five-a-side from each province or something along those lines, where it's more one event rather than it being a bunch of dispersed events where we're getting a champion per se. I know probably for funding purposes, Bulls Canada probably would not enjoy that, because I think having those champions is something important for funding purposes. But I know if we're again looking at cost effectiveness and getting kind of different groups together in one area, having sort of a five-a-side or each province sending a certain amount of people and then they're playing different events type of things. I don't know. I'm throwing kind of stuff against the wall here, answering what you're saying to me, but I do agree that sort of one-stop shop type of idea definitely is something that needs to be entertained.
So here's one of the ideas that I had to throw out. Popular, unpopular, whatever it is. So based on that one-stop shop idea, you have the Canadians all in one area, one club, potentially two clubs if they're close together, whatever. But in one area, you put everybody in, you run them all back to back to back. Part of the marketability problem that we have is we run the majors. Let's say we bring 100 people in from across Canada. Tourism for the city, for the province, for getting hotel, let's say sponsorships, all that kind of stuff. Not that great. They say we're going to be here for a week. We have 100 people coming in. We want some help and to get some sponsorship and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, big deal. But if you now turn that into, we're going to bring in 500 people for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, really flood the place with people, run things, have people attending, does that sort of increase the eyeballs that say, like, hey, maybe this is something that is worthwhile because we have a lot more people coming in for a little bit longer period of time, and to help out our community, whatever it is, if it was in Regina or if it was in Juan de Fuca or wherever could actually host a big event like that with the infrastructure, and then boost that club up. Start throwing more money at it because they're hosting everything. You might not need to duplicate some of these expenditures and put more money into the region, put more money into that club, so that in the future they'll want to host again. You can make the greens better. You can help with the clubhouse. You can, all those technological infrastructure issues that some clubs have. Get them a decent Wi-Fi. Get them or internet connection. Start streaming equipment in that area. Whatever it is, invest in that club because it is your one-stop shop for that year. Or maybe you sign a contract and do it for 2 years, 3 years, and just say, we're going to flood this club with money, make them better, make them the that pinnacle of what we want the championships to be, and just keep investing in clubs until we make them all better. It's not going to... In Canada, we have this idea, and maybe it's the same in other countries, where everybody gets a little bit. You go to a tournament and everybody gets $10 back because they won their last game or something like that, like some ridiculous stuff. I'm just saying, like, let's reward those top tier clubs. Let's reward those top tier players with good greens. Have everybody in at once. Make it super exciting and throw it out there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard answer to even give, because it can go really either way. I would agree. Being able to pump up, get the extra funding, everything to those top end clubs would potentially open up the avenues of almost having regional areas, like our regional institutes of like excellence. I don't know what the term exactly is, because most major sports have, and we don't, a Canadian Center of diving, Canadian Center of curling, whatever it might be, the sport. We don't have a Canadian Center of bowls. If we kind of went down that avenue where we maybe had those 3-4 facilities across Canada, the Western Canadian Center for bowls, like whatever it type is, I'm sure there's funding, extra things that can sort of be opened up by approaching it from the way you're sort of talking about. Because if you have that excellence area or that facility or a couple facilities that are really elite in those areas, it's going to help sort of foster the competitive part of the game. The only drawback I think seeing, or the idea you're talking about, is I think that's going to be a problem for sort of the grassroots part of the game, because every smaller club that's not going to get that extra funding, get that extra people coming to their events, whatever it might be, I think you're going to see problems sort of for the grassroots side of it, where we really do need to focus on getting people involved from that grassroots level, build the sport from the base up. But again, it's such a hard sell either direction, I think.
No, that's fair. What do you think about the format as it stands today? Would people would be up in arms about it? I'm I'm sure. Like, I mean, any change, people there's a segment of every Bulls population that's going to hate whatever change that you do. Um, what do you think it would mean to Canada if they just decided to up and blow up the Canadian Championships and say we're now making it five-a-side?
I
So you
think there'd
send
be a
five
lot
people
of,
from the province. However the province wants to do it, you have a 5-person team enter, and if they win, they go to the Canadians, or you select from the province, like whatever way it is. But if they just said, "Yeah, we're gonna do five-a-side," what do you think? Do you think people would like, just shit themselves? Or...
yeah, no, I fully foresee that would be like just blowing the game up essentially. I would love to see it because I think it would really improve the regional competitions that you're going to see. Because if you have a five-a-side thing, you're going to probably it's going to be difficult for you just to say that we're going to select our top 5 players if that's what we're going to end up doing, because it's like, okay, how do you base who's our top 5 players? You're then, I think, going to have a lot of regional competitions where they're playing against each other, getting points for however they're doing, whatever it might be. I think that's sort of how that system would have to work, is you're going to have 5 events, we'll say, over a summer, and you get points for however you place in these events, and then it's going to promote people to keep playing, probably get a lot of new people in trying to get into the lists. But I think you almost run into then what we see with WBT, where that ranking system might be flawed, where then I go, say I'm on the top 5, I go to the nationals, do really well, I'm obviously going to get a bunch of points, and then it becomes nearly impossible for anyone else in my province to probably take my spot in that top 5, right? So it's an interesting idea in theory. I think there would be a massive uprising if people tried to do that. My personal opinion is I think our best avenue would be to combine events that we're having and try and have it be just one kind of. So if we already have the singles and the majors combined, maybe combine the mixed pairs and the seniors as one. Maybe combine, really radical idea, the seniors and the juniors, have the two, but essentially just having one facility and then 1.5 weeks where you're having the more people brought in, sort of as you were alluding to, I think makes it a much more marketable to the travel associations, to the hotel associations, that instead of it being like the juniors will say, oh, we're bringing in 80 people for 5 days. It's a lot more appealing if, say, you're combining the juniors with we'll just say the seniors. So for 80 and turning that into 200 or 150, that's a lot more appealing. And realistically, if you have to expand it past 5 days to 7 days and have a 2 green facility make it work, I think that's fine. And I think costs wise, that's probably going to bring it down instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4 events, right?
No, that's fair. Derek Dillon in the chat here said Alberta Premier League format could go national, 5-a-side. I think it's an interesting idea. Like to see it. Like you said, there's a lot of really kind of cool ideas that could go with it, but there's potential pitfalls with everything, and it would be interesting to kind of expand on that idea and see what it actually would mean. Like one of the issues we have is we want the Canadian Championship to be a Canadian Championship, right? We don't want it to be a couple provinces. We don't want it to be something like that. We are often missing the smaller ones. Like Quebec has come back a little bit this past year, but for a while you didn't see a lot of Quebec. You didn't really see PI at all, and New Brunswick has disappeared off of the national map as well. So what do you do to try to entice them to come? Is it a fact of, if we have everything in one location, it's easier to travel for them, or is there nothing that we can do that will change the circumstance that we're in right now?
Really, my answer to that is we need to develop the game. The base level of the game needs to really increase, and the amount of members we have is a lot of the problem you're seeing is the provinces that attend nationals typically have funding behind them from their provincial sport association. So you get every nationals, you're seeing BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and those are the provinces that have, and Nova Scotia have some provincial money behind them, giving them some funding to attend nationals. The provinces that we're seeing issues with, a lot of the eastern provinces don't really have the provincial sport association giving them funding. Quebec, I don't know the answer about Quebec having provincial association funding, but regardless, those provinces that I listed off, they have that funding. That's why you see them there. And I think the problem that we see is those eastern provinces don't necessarily have the large enough membership to have those provincial associations say, oh, we have hundreds of bowlers here in Nova Scotia, so let's give them an increase in funding, or let's give them some funding. I think the base level really needs to be brought up, and we need to promote the social side, get the people in the door to have those associations take notice, and then potentially have more funding start coming in. And then that really will entice people to go to nationals, because if you're getting $500 to offset your costs, that's a lot better for a person from, we'll say, New Brunswick to travel to Victoria, for example, this summer. Nationals, probably a couple $1,000s at least to get yourself there, your hotel, everything involved. And if you have no funding from your association, that's a really tough amount to absorb. You have to really love the game. You have to really want to be there to pay that type of money. But if you have $500,000 coming from your association, I think there's a lot more chance that you're going to see people. If it's okay, I'm only having to pay $1,000, I get to go away for the whole week, play the game, everything like that. So that's my solution. Obviously, not easy to figure out how to get the people in the door, though.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of, I'll just say, lack of development in some of the provinces that probably needs to be there before we'll actually see them come back. It's probably a long-term goal to get the Canadian championships to be the Canadian championships where we have everybody back, because there's a lot of work on some of those little bits and some of the provinces that don't get anything to actually build some revenue and build some stuff that they can actually start handing out. We've got Derek back in the chat. Most popular games for spectators in Australia: BPL and Australian Open, not the national championships. That's true. I mean, you don't really, I don't see anything about the national championships really. You do see some streams on, state finals and whatever in Australia, but the big ones that are on TV that have everything going behind them are, BPL and Australian Open, and then the UBC as well as that base for excitement.
If I'm interjecting here,
go ahead.
Sort of what Derek's getting at there, like we're talking about the BPL, sort of the new interesting kind of out there formats are really being proven to be successful, and they're being like well attended. People are interested in them in Australia there. And what I talked about earlier with the sort of casual leagues that have been starting in Saskatchewan and sort of spreading all across the country, they've been proven to be successful, and they're bringing people out to try the game. And so really, we made a video last year. Maybe Daryl will reshare it. I'm not sure. It's probably still relevant what I created last year, talking about how clubs can create these leagues and make thousands of dollars. And it brings people back every year. Like Regina, we've had teams be part of this league now for, I think, 4 years, 5 years straight. And it's a lot of it is we're keeping 70%, 75% of the teams are just registering again the year after. So you're obviously keeping members, you're getting new people in. And I think it's something that people really do have to pursue, is the new interesting types of ideas and really embrace the change in the game. We're almost doing a full circle from what we originally started talking here, but it's embracing the change, trying new things, and not being scared to really have to do maybe a little extra work of getting a liquor permit, figuring out whatever your insurances need to be. It's a bit of work. It's a little bit of a challenge, but there are people that will be willing to help you, sort of steer you in what you need to do. Like reach out to us, like the B Cube people in Regina. If you send them messages, people are probably going to be willing to help you, give them frameworks, what you need to do to try these new ideas to get people out there and get people trying to play, getting in bowls. Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I'll wrap this up just by saying, yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff and threw a lot of stuff out there that may or may not be helpful. Who knows? But I think one of the big things we need to do in bowls, and that's anywhere, is like really don't be afraid to fail. If you're not going to try anything new, nothing new is going to happen. If you're not willing to put yourself out there and like Derek has tried the Alberta Premier League, it could have failed. He could have put it out there 5-a-side, done the Alberta Premier League. It could have ran for a year and then not again because everybody thought, who cares? Um, the beer leagues, the B cubed, right? You came up with a concept, you went for it, and you ran it a bunch of times, and it was successful. It may not have. Who knows? But there's ideas out there that work. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just copy and paste a lot of the stuff that people have built before you. So just reach out. If your club is struggling, there's ways that you can help yourself get out of it. Just make sure that you reach out and try to get contact with people. Facebook groups. Contact us. We can try to get you into the in contact with the right people. Those that have run things before and can give you advice on things like liquor licenses that can be scary to a lot of clubs. My club hesitated on doing that for years and years and years until we finally went ahead and did it. And fingers crossed, we did it on a trial basis, and it worked phenomenally. So now we have it full time, and it's great. But if you're not willing to try, you're not going to get anywhere new. And I think that's one of the things about here: the marketability, the regionality in Canada, changing the championships. We're going to have to be willing to try something new to really spark up the game and make it interesting for people. And there's going to be haters out there, regardless of what you do and how you do it. But you have to be willing to take the heat and just try something new, really.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. Embracing change. That's really what we need to have as the avenue going forward for bowls, because change is required to, I think, really develop it and have it be sort of the sport we want it to be. And there's so many new ideas, things that you just need to try. Don't be afraid to fail. As you said, it's an important part of that process of steering towards what you want things to be.
And to be fair, I mean, I'm guaranteed not to like all the changes that'll be made to national championships, to Commonwealth Games, to whatever. You're probably the same, and it might not even be the same things. You might like something that I hate, and vice versa. But the idea is things have to be tried. I mean, if I don't like it, that's okay. If it works, that's the big deal, right? I don't have to like it for it to be a good idea and whatever. The mass people that are typing on their keyboards on Twitter or Facebook don't have to like it, but who cares if they're not out there trying something new? I don't care.
Like your stink face, perfect. So is there really anything else you wanted to cover here today, Daryl?
I don't think so. That was good. Enjoyed the conversation. I think we're gonna have to try to pull some of these really interesting questions in and have chats about them, because everybody seems to like it. And again, if you have ideas on the marketability, the regionality of bowls in Canada or even in your country, things that have worked in your club or in your country, if you're not from Canada, share them out. Pop them in our comments below, and we'll share them out in our Facebook stuff and our socials. The more we share worldwide, the more we share with clubs and with each other, the more ideas that are out there that we can get to work. So don't be afraid to pop stuff in the comments. We read them, we respond, we use them. So just let us know what you're doing that's working really well. That's it, really.
Perfect. I guess I'll do our reminder. If you are here, liked what we talked about, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Any help obviously does help. We're both wearing merchandise. If you are interested, you can check out our merchandise. Again, any sort of help really does assist us with moving things forward. Pretty much any dollar we get goes back into this podcast and purchasing equipment, whatever we're trying to do. We are putting all of it back into the podcast at this point. So any support is much appreciated. I guess with that, May all your bowls be touchers.